June 26, 2015. So today I'm in St. Augustine with my cousin Olivia, and we will be going on a train tour for, I think it's about an hour and a half around St. Augustine. Hope you guys enjoy the video. And there's the train we're going to be taking.
My name is Smokey. I'm going to take over for Roy.
Smokey.
And we're going to make our way out of the Welcome Center back downtown into the historic part of St. Augustine. It's going to take us about an hour and 30 minutes to do a full 8.5-mile loop around the city. 24 stops along the way. And at any of those 24 stops, if you're interested, you can jump off the train. Another train will come by about every 20 minutes or so to pick you up. Now we are getting towards the end of our tour day today, so keep an eye on the clock. The last train is going to leave from that headquarters at 4:30 this afternoon. When that one leaves, it's going to make one last loop around the city. It'll get back there just about 6 o'clock, but that'll be the last train that leaves at 4:30. So you want to make sure you're on a train by no later than 4:30 this afternoon.
Fountain of Youth.
As we work our way south, ladies and gentlemen, we are also working our way back in time. That's right. We're heading into the colonial era, back to the 1500s, back to a time when a young shipmate of the name of Ponce de Leon, he was a shipmate of Christopher Columbus's, Ponce de Leon, otherwise known as Ponce, set sail in search for a fabled island. Now the island was called Bimini, and on that island of Bimini, it was rumored to be filled with gold and silver. So young Ponce set sail around the Bahamian Isles. He spots an unfamiliar shore, rides along the coast until he spots a harbor. And he comes ashore somewhere out here. We're not exactly sure where, but we do know it was Easter Sunday, and we do know the year was 1513. Now he declared this land for Spain and called it La Florida, in honor of the Easter season, but also in honor of the land of flowers. Now if you look out your left-hand side, you'll notice that very large cross in the distance. Ladies and gentlemen, that large cross represents the spot where another young Spaniard came ashore about 50 years after Ponce. His name was Don Pedro Menendez of Avila, Spain. See, between the time of Ponce and Pedro, there was a Frenchman by the name of Jean Ribault. Well, Jean Ribault actually started to establish a little bit north of St. Augustine in a part of Jacksonville known as Fort Caroline today. Well, the King of Spain was worried about losing his trade waters to the king, so he calls on Don Pedro Menendez, otherwise known as the Butcher of Avila. And he says, Don Pedro, I want you to head over to La Florida. I want you to rid the land of the French and anybody who does not convert to Catholicism. Then I want you to protect our trade waters, so make sure you bring enough people to establish a settlement. Don Pedro, being a faithful servant to the king, gets about 600 crewmen and a priest, gets on a few ships and makes his way over to La Florida. Ladies and gentlemen, he came ashore right where that large cross stands today that we passed back there on your left. The date was September the 8th, 1565. Now, believe it or not, our little city of St. Augustine has been continuously occupied ever since the very day that Don Pedro Menendez came ashore. Now, that does two things for us here in St. Augustine. For one, it makes us the oldest continuously occupied European settlement in North America. Now, the second thing it does for us, ladies and gentlemen, is it gives us our nickname. That's right, folks. If you were ever wondering how we got the name of the nation's oldest city, well, wonder no further, because I just told you. That's right, guys. That's my goal as we make our way around the city. I'm hoping to share with you things about St. Augustine that you do not already know. So as we venture around on this 8.5-mile journey, I'm going to share with you lots of facts, lots of history. I'm also going to share with you some fun-filled facts that I call Smoky Extras. Now, if you've never heard of a Smoky Extra is something you'll only hear on my train. My name being Smoky, the extra being extra research that I did outside of the history to share with you some fun facts that you will not hear on anybody else's train. As a matter of fact, let's talk about one of those Smoky Extras right now. If you look off to the front of the train, on the left-hand side, you'll notice a yellow castle-looking building. Across the street from that, a wooden building with a sign, Potter's Wax Museum, on it. Now, below that wooden sign, you're going to see a silver sign that says Authentic Old Drugstore. Guys, I did a little extra research on this building. Do you know that I found out that that building has actually been slated as the oldest drugstore in the United States? As a matter of fact, you can go on inside and experience some of the drugstore before making your way to Potter's Wax Museum in the back.
Oldest drugstore in the
Now on your right-hand side, this is what they call a readout. A readout is a military structure. And inside a military structure like this one, well, you would find your military, and they would carry large artillery, larger than we can carry on the wall. That one right there is called the Santo Domingo Readout. See, when we were walled in, we had 9 of those going around our city to protect us from outsiders. That one is a replica where you can actually go on inside. This brick building on your left-hand side used to be our K-12 school. Now it's actually home to the St. Johns County School District main offices. And here comes another smoky extra. If you look out to your left-hand side, as we go around the bend here, you're going to notice this large wooden park. Well, the park is called Swing Park, ladies and gentlemen. As a matter of fact, Swing Park, I found out, was built by 5,000 volunteers in the course of 1 week back in the 1990s. Now inside this park, you're going to find over 23,000 square feet of fun, a shade structure, and there's only one way in and out of that park over by the tennis courts. And if you're saying, Smokey, why is there only one way in and out of a park that big? Well, my belief, folks, is for safety. I have 2 little girls and they play inside that park all the time, but guess what? They can never exit the park without passing by me first to get to that one exit. Or if you're parked in this large parking structure on your right-hand side, our next stop might be the stop for you. It's called the Visitor Information Center, ladies and gentlemen, otherwise known as the VIC. It's also a shortcut to Ripley's, believe it or not. Now, I will be back there in just a moment. We are going to go across the street and stop there. But if you're anxious to get there sooner than a few minutes, well, this might be your stop. Folks, we're going to ring the bell 2 times to let you know that it's safe to exit here at our Visitor Information Center. And if you're leaving me right here, I hope you had a great time on the train today. Again, my name is Smokey. It was nice meeting you. It was short, but it was sweet. Our first stop, the Visitor Information Center, otherwise known as the VIC.
Everybody's leaving, yeah.
Well, you guys got a private charter.
Look at that, perfect. We got a private charter.
All aboard.
Look at that.
Well, on our journey around the city, guys, you're going to find out that St. Augustine is known for lots of things. Beauty, charm, and history, just to name a few of them. And of course, you're going to get that history plus a little bit more, because I'm going to give you those smoky extras as we make our way around. Now, folks, when I was in school, I always thought that history was kind of a heavy subject. So when I came to this job, I said, do you mind if I keep the heavy stuff out? Well, they said, no, Smokey, you can make it any way you like. So I was going to try to make it light and fluffy. Well, you can't do that for very long, ladies and gentlemen, because when it comes to history, there's always something a little bit heavy. I'll talk more about that in just a moment, but let's talk about that beautiful building in front of us. Our next stop, Ripley's Believe It or Not. Guys, Ripley's Believe It or Not was actually built as a private residence. See, there was an oil tycoon named William Worden and his family. They wanted a nice large house here in St. Augustine, so they asked the architects to build them a sister building to the Via Zareta. Now, you'll see the Via Zareta a little bit later on. The Via Zareta is an Alhambra Palace lookalike, but it's a little bit smaller. Well, this is actually a little bit bigger. Now, Mr. Worden and his family lived inside this house for many years, but then he sells the house to a woman named Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings. Now, Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings, I don't know if you know who she is. She's the Pulitzer Prize-winning author. She wrote The Yearling and Cross Creek, and she turned this building into a hotel. While it was a hotel, the Ripleys came and stayed at the hotel. Now, they fell in love with it. They wanted to buy it. Well, she says, no dice. So they wait, and they wait until she passes away. Then, they try to buy it from her husband, Mr. Baskin. Well, Mr. Baskin does sell it to the Ripleys, and this is actually said to be the first building, the original Ripley's, believe it or not, out of the 30 that are all around the world today. Ladies and gentlemen, this actually being the place where they filmed the 1980s television show Ripley's, believe it or not, starring Mr. Jack Palance. And if you go inside this beautiful building, well, make sure you check out Miracle Mike the Headless Chicken, the largest pair of Converse sneakers, posters made out of jelly beans, as well as a garrote chair and other strange but true oddities. Our next stop on the red train is going to be our Ripley's, believe it or not. And if you're going to exit here, please wait till I get in front of the canopy and ring the bell to let you know that it's safe to exit the train.
Wait for me to come back to the stop.
Check out that horse. Do you know that that guy's made completely out of car bumpers? That's right. Try that one back there. Try to build something like
back
that.
there. Oh, there you go. Car bumpers.
Our next stop on the red train, ladies and gentlemen, is Ripley's Believe It or Not. You guys can come this way. This guy's going to be sitting here for a minute. We'll get John over here.
So you see how this
I can
thing
put
works?
it up here after you take the baby out, of course. It folds up, right? Yeah, so once you take the baby out, we'll collapse it and I'll put it right up here with me.
Okay, so you see
Now,
how this
some of
train
them might
works.
be
You can
wet.
get
I
on
can
and
get a
off at
punch
some
or
of
to
these
sit on here.
tourist attractions here, so
Like-
that's pretty neat.
Some people just got out, so there might be some dry ones a few back. They were sitting on a whole bunch of them back there.
Yeah, somebody else soaked up the water.
Yeah, somebody else had the wet butt.
On the left is like some log home over there. You see that log house over there? Yeah. Right over there. I don't know. It's apparently it's leaking because they got a tarp over it. But
all right, let's head on out, guys. My name is Smokey. I want to welcome you guys aboard the Red Train today. It's an hour and 30-minute tour, 24 stops along the way. Let's jump right in at this log on your left-hand side, because this log inside actually has 4 rooms carved inside, said to be carved by one man with just one knife. That's right, guys, and while you're here at the grounds of Ripley's, you can't leave without checking out a couple of things. Look off to your right-hand side at that alligator you see laying in the grass right there. He just came to us the other day from Orlando, but behind that alligator is a large bush, and behind that bush, the statue of David. Now, ladies and gentlemen, is that the original statue of David? Of course not. He's in Italy, but this guy is an exact replica of the statue of David in Italy, standing in at 14 feet tall, weighing in at 10 solid tons, and he's carved from one solid piece of Carrara marble. Now, that statue of David, actually the Carrara marble came from the same quarry as the original statue of David in Italy, and he's an exact replica, everything included, folks. That's right, anatomically correct. The only thing he's wearing is the grimace on his face. On your right-hand side, this graveyard here, cemetery, actually known as the Huguenot Cemetery, or the public burying ground. This is where you were buried back in the 1800s if you met your demise and you were non-Catholic. Well, in 1821, we had a yellow fever epidemic break out here in St. Augustine, which decimated a third of the population. Now, a lot of the folks were non-Catholic, so they were buried right there in that cemetery on your right. Now, don't let the size of that cemetery fool you, folks. There are said to be over 500 bodies laid to rest inside that cemetery, but only about 164 tombstones. Well, that's because it is a mass grave site. Our next stop on the Red Train is going to be our City Gates train station, home to Burger Buckets and O'Malley's Irish Pub across the way. Our next stop, the City Gates train station.
Burger Buckets. Smells great over here.
All aboard.
Oh man, it smells good here.
Now, if you look out in front of the train as I make the turn here, off to the left, there's a parking lot, but across the street from the parking lot is another cemetery. It's called the Talamato Cemetery. And that's where you were buried back in the 1800s if you met your demise and you were Catholic. Now look at the white picket fence on the left-hand side. Behind it in the corner, you're going to notice an oak tree. Look up about 8 feet in that oak tree. Notice the palm tree growing out in the middle of the oak tree. Guys, that's not normal. That's actually 2 trees planted over 100 years ago by a young couple in love to show their love and commitment to each other. It's called St. Augustine's Love Tree.
Right there.
They say if you kiss a loved one underneath or near that tree, like right here, might be close enough, you may have eternal love.
That's
so lean
cool,
over, give somebody a smooch on the love train. You can kiss your kid
Burger
too.
Buckets.
They just say they'll never leave. Just saying. Alright, guys. And if you look out to your left-hand side, you'll notice these palm logs here on your left-hand side. They make up what used to be the north wall of the city called the Kubo line. See, the Kubo line stretched from that fort in front of us all the way down to that street right there and met up with another wall that ran south called the Rosario line. Now, the only way you could get in and out of that city wall, ladies and gentlemen, were through these 2 stone pillars coming up on your left-hand side. These stone pillars are the actual city gates built back in 1808, made out of coquina, but they're still standing today. The only thing missing is the drawbridge that went in between them. Folks, if that drawbridge was open, you came and went as you pleased, but if it was closed, well, you spent your night either in or out of the city. Our next stop on the Red Train, ladies and gentlemen, is North St. George Street and the city gates.
Actually, there you go. You can see it this way.
All aboard.
There's the city gates. City gates.
Now, some of you might be
Olivia?
up for a pirate's adventure while you're in town. Arr, mateys. Well, if you like pirates, you might want to take a look inside our Pirate Treasure Museum. Because, ladies and gentlemen, St. Augustine houses the largest collection of rare pirates artifacts anywhere in the world. That's right, guys. If you look out to your right-hand side, you'll see our Pirate Treasure Museum, where you can find a real pirate treasure chest inside, said to be over 400 years old, weighs over 150 pounds, and that's if it were completely empty. Now, have you ever known a pirate chest to be empty, ladies and gentlemen? Of course not. It's probably filled with plenty of pirate booty. Well, also inside, you'll find the world's oldest wanted posters, a Jolly Roger flag. You're also going to find a sword that Johnny Depp used in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not up for a pirate adventure, then go right next door to the Colonial Quarter. You see that tall tower right there? It stands 34 feet up in the air. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a 17th century Spanish tower. As a matter of fact, it's all part of the Colonial Quarter, which is a 17th century Spanish fortified town. Now you can take part in a musket drill, watch as blacksmiths forge steel into utensils, climb to the top of that tower. It all takes place here behind the fence on our right. Now this will be our stop for 2 different attractions. That's right, you got the Colonial Quarter and the Pirate Treasure Museum, all right here at our next stop. Thank you, guys. Well, if you're looking out to your left-hand side, you might notice that large fort over there on your left-hand side. If you're saying, gosh, isn't Smokey going to talk about that fort? Well, of course I'm going to talk about that fort. I'm just not going to do it right now. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to save that for later. Let's talk about the waterway on your left-hand side, known as the Matanzas Bay. Because that, ladies and gentlemen, is the actual waterway Spanish sailors would use to sail back to Spain. As a matter of fact, across that waterway is Anastasia Island. Anastasia Island is one of the only 2 places I know where you used to be able to get a very unique shellstone here in St. Augustine called coquina. Now, folks, that quarry is closed down, but we're going to talk more about coquina later on in our adventure. Right now, we're heading west on a street called Hippolyta. Now, Hippolyta is going to run into a bunch of streets. One of them is called St. George. But folks, between St. George and Hippolyta, you're going to find over 240 shops, boutiques, and restaurants. Let's talk about a few of them as we go up. On your left-hand side, you got the Backyard at Meehan's Tropical Island Cafe. And if you're looking for gourmet popsicles today, you might want to swing in the Hippo on your right-hand side. There's this one right here and another one up on St. George Street. If you'd rather waffles and milkshakes, then why you want to go to Cousteau's here on your left-hand side. And if you're looking for herbal massage and reflexology, you'll find it on the right. We have Catch 27 on your left-hand side for fresh fish. If you're looking for the best guacamole in town, they say you'll find it right here at the Casa Maya on your right-hand side. They also have Lemon Yellow Sun on your right-hand side for juices and smoothies. On your left-hand side, if you're looking for global cuisine, you got I Spy back here on your left. And if you make your way down the alleyway on your left-hand side, you're going to find Pizza Alley. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have one stop. It's at the corner of St. George and Hippolyta right here. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to exit the train, I ask that you do so carefully. We have a bench here on the left if you do want to get back on the train later on. And I saw that woman plugging her ears. Is the volume too loud for you guys? It's okay? Okay. She was like this when we went by. I don't know, maybe she just doesn't like the trains. I don't know. A lot of people do that here. Well, folks, we're going to stop at the stop sign. When I ring the bell, then you'll know it's safe to exit the train or enter the train. Again, if you want to get back on the train later on, this is our stop. It's at the corner of St. George and Hippolyta Street. I'm going to ring the bell here in order to know that it's safe.
What do you think, Olivia? Neat, huh?
I'm going to keep ringing the bell. This is not so you can exit, but so people know not to walk in front of our train. Look out at St. George Street, ladies and gentlemen. It's a half-a-mile stretch from one end to the other. 220 shops just on St. George Street alone. You can spend all day back here. Let's talk about a few more as we go west.
Cool.
You got Fiesta Jack's Mexican Grill on your left-hand side, Henley's Steak and Seafood, the Cuban Bakery, the Monkey Life Cafe. And if you like to shop, well, check out Cotton Waves on your right-hand side, the Metal Art Store, the Gifted Cork on your right-hand side. Just up the way on your left, you got the Spice and Tea Exchange, Bath Junkie, Schmegel's Bagels, Scarlett O'Hara's. Folks, it's all back here, and you can spend hours just on Hippolyta and St. George Street.
Yeah, huh?
Now, folks, as we keep going west, we are heading out of the colonial era into an era known as the Flagler era. Now, the Flagler era was named after a guy named Henry Morrison Flagler. How many people on the train ever heard of Mr. Flagler before? Few of you. Well, Mr. Flagler, he was actually a business partner with John D. Rockefeller back in the 1800s. The two of them owned a little oil company back then called Standard Oil. Well, Standard Oil turned out to be ExxonMobil, much bigger today. Well, get this, in 1884, Mr. Flagler comes here to St. Augustine on his honeymoon. Aww, isn't that sweet? Well, guess what? While he's here, he falls in love with the city. He leans over to his wife and he says, "Dear, we're going to go back to St. Augustine and change it forever. I vow to change it to a Newport, Rhode Island of the South." She says, "How are you going to do that?" He says, "I'm going to build a couple of hotels." But what about that church? Well, I'm going to move that church. Ladies and gentlemen, if you look out to your left-hand side, the very church I'm talking about, right there in front of you, Grace United Methodist Church. See, this church used to be down the block, but it was in ruins. Well, Mr. Flagler, he goes to the congregation, he says, "I'll trade you some of my land for your land, but on that land, I'll build you a brand new church out of poured concrete and terracotta ornamentation." Well, they agreed, and Grace United was reborn right here on your right. Look at those doors, folks. Those are hand-carved mahogany doors. said to weigh in at over 400 pounds each. That's right. Now you can actually go inside that beautiful church, but there are a couple of caveats to that. The first one being, well, the doors have to be open. The second one being, well, they don't have a schedule. So you gotta be in the right place at the right time if you want to get inside. Now they do open the doors several times throughout the day to actually protect and the wear and tear on the hinges. In front of us, our next building to take a look at, folks, that yellow building on your right hand side, known as Ancient City Baptist Church. See, the Baptists wanted a new church too. Well, Flagler said, I'll help you out. I'll donate $5,000 property for your church, but you gotta do 3 things for me in return. 1, you have to donate $10,000 or more. 2, you have to make sure that the church is always debt-free. And 3, you can never ever put a bell in the bell tower. Ladies and gentlemen, if you look over and up to your right-hand side, you'll notice that there's a bell tower on the corner, but you'll also notice there is no bell in the bell tower. That's right, the only bell you might hear is my bell. And if you're saying, Smokey, that doesn't make any sense, well, it does make sense if you didn't want a bell in that bell tower to interfere with the bell in your bell tower. That's right, guys, look out your right-hand side of that massive great church known as Flagler Memorial Presbyterian Church. See, in 1889, Mr. Flagler, he became a grandpa. His daughter, Jenna Louise, gives birth to a little baby girl named Marjorie. Now, unfortunately, there were some complications, and the 2 young ladies passed away. Well, Flagler wants a church built in honor of his daughter. He wants it done in less than a year, so he hires 1,000 employees. They work night and day, and they finish this church in 361 days. Folks, inside that church are a bunch of smoky extras. These are things you'll only hear on my train, ladies and gentlemen. Extra things that I looked up. I found out inside you're going to find the original mahogany pews. You're going to find oil lanterns at the end of those pews, 92 stained glass windows, a 5,000 pipe organ, but you're also going to find a mausoleum. And folks, inside that mausoleum are the bodies of Mr. Flagler, his wife, daughter, and baby. They're all on display inside Flagler Memorial Presbyterian Church. Our next stop, folks, unfortunately it is closed, so you cannot go inside, but that copper dome on top, raising up 150 feet in the air. That's right, if you look out and up to your right, you'll see that copper dome on top of the church. Beautiful church inside, very dark, but very nice inside. And if we get around the corner here and you look back, you'll probably get a better view than being right on top of it. You can see that copper dome from here. The cross on top, another 25 feet up from that. And let's back it up to happier times. 1885 to 1888, Flagler comes here to St. Augustine to build a beautiful Ponce de Leon Hotel on your right-hand side. Now home to Flagler College, ladies and gentlemen. It took 3 years to build this hotel on your right-hand side. And when it finally opened in the winter of 1888, well, there were some quirks. That's right, I said quirks. For one, the hotel was only open 3 months out of every year. January, February, and March. 2, it doesn't matter if you stayed in this hotel for a day, a week, a month, or more. You had to pay for all 3 months in advance to stay inside. Now guys, inside you've got exquisite rooms, painted murals on the ceiling, hot and cold running water, which wasn't standard, but you also found an amenity 3 years before the White House. That amenity, ladies and gentlemen, it was called electricity. That's right, this building on your right-hand side had electricity before the White House. Well, that's because Mr. Flagler, he was friends with a guy you may have heard of him. His name was Thomas Edison. And guys, I'm going to give you a smoky extra about that power in a second, but check out the rotunda on your right-hand side, housing the largest collection of Tiffany stained glass windows anywhere in the world. Well, that's because Mr. Flagler, he was friends with another guy you may have heard of. His name was Louis Comfort Tiffany. As a matter of fact, he had those windows specifically built for the hotel. That's right, it was said to be the grand ballroom of the hotel when it was open. Now it is actually the dining hall of the college. So let's back it up to my smoky extra about power in the pond. See folks, it was the 1800s and power wasn't everywhere. But Flagler wants it in his hotel, so he gets in touch with his friend Thomas Edison. He says, Tom, what can you do for me? Well, I find out that Mr. Edison built a specific steam plant just to power this hotel. Do you know that it took 8 tons of coal every single day to power the 4,000 light bulbs that ran through this hotel? The funny thing about that is that Mr. Flagler's guests were scared of electricity. As a matter of fact, they didn't even want to touch the light switches. So Mr. Flagler hires a separate crew to follow his guests around. The only thing they do is turn on and off the light switches. That's right, they were called lightmen or switchers, and they got paid 75 cents a day. Our next stop on the red train, ladies and gentlemen, this square building on your left-hand side. Now, this building actually built as a private residence for a Boston millionaire named Franklin Waldo Smith. See, Mr. Smith, he takes a trip to the Alhambra Palace in Spain, falls in love with the building so much so that he wants his home here in St. Augustine to look just like it. So he tells his architects, get to work. His architects tell him, sir, it's much too large. So he says, fine, build it as a replica of the wing of that palace. Well, they tell him that's still too large, so he finally tells them to build it as a replica of the wing, but to build it at 1/10 its size. And that's what they did, ladies and gentlemen. The Via Zareta on your right-hand side is a 1/10 scale replica of the Alhambra Palace wing in Spain. And inside, you can find the collections of Mr. Smith on display through a state-of-the-art self-guided audio tour. Now, that tour is offered in 3 different languages: English, Spanish, and French. Our next stop, the Via Zareta. Inside, I want you to look out to your left and notice the statue that's standing in front of the college. That statue is actually a statue of Mr. Flagler, and I did a little smoky research on that statue so I could find out a couple of smoky extras. Do you know that I found out that there are 2 of those statues? This one right here, the other one is down in Palm Beach. I found out that both statues were made by the same unnamed artist from Italy, and ladies and gentlemen, I also found out that Mr. Flagler never commissioned that statue. As a matter of fact, he despised that statue, and I quote, he said you can sink it in the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean for all I care. Well, as you can see, they didn't sink it in the bottom of the Atlantic. But I will give you another smoky extra about that statue, folks. They did not uncrate that statue until 3 years after Mr. Flagler's death. You got a ghost train, Mike. Our next stop on the red train, ladies and gentlemen, the second hotel of Mr. Flagler's, known as the Alcazar Hotel, now known as the Lightner Museum. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk all about this beautiful hotel once we stop here and pick up our friends waiting at our stop. Our next stop on the red train, the Alcazar, otherwise known as the Lightner. Are you guys coming with me? Okay, all aboard. Now there's some dry seats right by where these guys are sitting because there were some people that were on the train that got off. So look for a dry one there, that way you don't have a wet bottom.